I'm Matt Simmons, Chairman of Simmons & Company.
The first question is, what should Michigan be doing to prepare for peak oil?
Well, I think that Michigan obviously is the automobile capital of the United States. Needs to rethink its strategy. I don't believe that we're going to be able to invent a new generation of cars fast enough to both the creation of a new highly efficient car and then the turnover of the vehicle fleet takes decades to implement. And so I think that the solutions to this whole problem are going to be traveling less. And there are probably some elements of the change that Michigan can embrace that actually kind of changes the state's economy. I'm not terribly familiar with the economy of Michigan, other than the fact that it's cars. But as for instance, the Mesabi Iron Ore Range is across the north is going to come back like gangbusters. The localized creation of localized goods. We're going to have to end this fantasy land of what we call globalization, which was effectively to take a car, for instance, to take a car apart to its smallest part and then search around the world to find some place where someone's still willing to work for $2 a day. And then we zing that cheap part all across the world and finally assemble it. Well, we have to stop that because it was too energy intensive. So I don't think that it necessarily is a lights out for a Michigan economy. But I think what would be a lights out is if you had the leadership pretending that over the next 5 to 10 years we'll reinvent the car fleet and be coming out with 100-mile-per-gallon electric cars when we don't even have the technology to make that work yet. So that would, I think, be my message to the people of Michigan is realize that the answer to a post-peak oil world is we have to really intensively reduce the way we consume oil, which is basically traveling less, and that's liberating the workforce, allowing people to basically work in their villages and be connected by webcam and email and so forth. And we have the tools to do it today. We don't have the industrial and organizational mindset to allow people to do that.
So what would your number one recommendation be for the auto industry in Michigan?
To probably rethink the whole mode of transportation and how rapidly could you switch to light rail systems and obviously the cars are going to change. I would probably take a leaf out of the Mini Cooper great success story where you basically don't have inventory. I still marvel as I travel around the United States. We were in southern Utah last week and I suspect that I maybe saw 10,000 cars in car lots around the greater St. George, Utah. In Mid-Coast, Maine, just driving between Rockland and Rockport, we spend the summer. There are probably 1,500 cars in the car lots. So it was just a broken model as to how you sell things. I think we need to grow food locally, so the dairy farms of Michigan are going to come roaring back. So I think that we're going to return. The Great Lakes are going to be great shipping routes. I think all of those things are going to have profound change. We're really going to basically have to go back to living a little bit like what we were doing in the sort of 1880s. And as places that were prosperous, they're going to have to recreate prosperity because they were basically where there were water and ports and so forth. That's the future of the world. We have to get rid of the fact that realistically, 10 years from now, we could quite easily be only able to consume 2/3 of the oil that we're now producing. And that's going to cause some very radical changes in the way we live.
Michigan imports 100% of its uranium, 100% of its coal, 95% of its petroleum, and 80% of its natural gas. What would you recommend Michigan do as far as energy, electricity in particular?
Well, probably spend some serious time evaluating the quality of wind in the Great Lakes. I'm involved in a project in Mid-Coast, Maine, where we're basically assembled an unbelievably smart group of scientists to study the quality of wind in the Gulf of Maine. And it turns out that it's probably the single most sustainable, high-quality wind during the winter. And so we're talking about 90 offshore platforms, and on those platforms will be 300-meter wind turbines, the largest wind turbines in the world, built with the composites coming out of the University of Maine system. And those 90 platforms will have the electricity output equivalent to 5 nuclear plants. I suspect that around the Great Lakes, there's probably sort of that same quality of offshore wind. Wind's big limitations onshore is it's so intermittent. But offshore, particularly during the winter, you have way more reliable wind.
The last question is, what should individuals be doing to prepare for peak oil?
I guess start with a very realistic assessment as to how unbelievably cheap oil still is, as opposed to complaining about how unbelievably unfair the current prices are. And start adjusting mentally for the fact that we're probably going to end up having oil at $400, $500, $600 a barrel, and that's still probably a bargain, so that you don't have the mental anguish that comes with that sticker shock. And then just basically organize your lives to liberate the workforce, travel less, grow food locally, make goods locally, and we can actually kind of come out of this in a remarkably smart way. But if we don't do that, we're going to blow ourselves up.
Okay, thank you very much for the time.
Great.